On August 9, 1988, the greatest hockey player in the world was sent to the Los Angeles Kings for Jimmy Carson, Martin Gelinas, 3 first-round picks, and $15 million. To this day, it is still one of the most shocking trades in sports history. But what was the thought behind it? Why did the Edmonton Oilers trade Wayne Gretzky? Before we get into the details of the trade, it's best to discuss the events prior to see why it was such a shock. Edmonton had just won the Stanley Cup, and not just the previous cup, but they had won 4 of the past 5 Stanley Cup championships. And Gretzky, who was only 28, already held an astonishing number of NHL records, such as being the fastest player to reach 1,000 and 1,500 career points, on top of winning the Hart Trophy as the NHL's MVP 9 consecutive times. Gretzky was already the greatest ever at 28 years old. In any other sport, he would be absolutely untradeable. So why trade him? Well, the answer is the same as a lot of head-scratching decisions in sports: money. Even though the Oilers had won 4 of the past 5 Stanley Cups, they were still a small market team, and they were loaded with stars alongside Gretzky, such as Mark Messier, Jari Kurri, and Grant Fuhr, who would all have to be paid. So the team needed cash, and Gretzky had 1 year left on his contract, which had a clause that he would become an unrestricted free agent following the 1988-89 season. As you can imagine, he wanted to get paid, and rightfully so. And as Oilers owner Peter Pocklington realized, trading Gretzky at the height of his career would bring in the most assets in return. And so, he began shopping the Great One in the summer of '88, with Pocklington telling Gretzky that he would be traded. At first, Gretzky did not want to leave Edmonton, and why would he? The Oilers were the lifeblood of Edmonton, and the team was the best in the league for the past 5 seasons. Enter Los Angeles Kings owner Bruce McNall. Once McNall became the largest stakeholder in the Kings, every time he saw Pocklington, he would ask about trading for Gretzky. And according to him, the answer was never yes, but it wasn't no either. After the '88 season, Pocklington called McNall and asked him to negotiate. Pocklington asked for players and picks, but most importantly, he asked for $15 million USD. During the summer, Gretzky met with McNall. He actually helped orchestrate a lot of the deal, specifically who was sent to Los Angeles alongside Wayne, who would end up being Marty McSorley and Mike Krushelnyski. But a pivotal moment happened when Gretzky was with McNall in his office in Los Angeles. Pocklington called McNall without knowing Gretzky was there, and McNall put him on speaker. Pocklington then told McNall that Gretzky wasn't good for Edmonton, that he was complaining all the time, and insulted Wayne's new wife, Janet Jones. Once McNall hung up on Pocklington, Gretzky said to McNall, "I'm an LA King." When Pocklington told Oilers head coach Glenn Slather about the deal, Slather was not pleased. And Slather very much tried to stop the deal, but his efforts were shot down, and he had to go along with the trade. On August 9, 1988, as they were making their way to the press conference, Pocklington and Slather pulled Gretzky aside and told him that if he wanted to back out, they could pull out of the deal. But Gretzky figured they had come this far, it was best for all parties involved, and told them to go forward with the deal. So here's the trade. Wayne Gretzky was traded to the Los Angeles Kings alongside Marty McSorley and Mike Krushelnyski in exchange for Jimmy Carson, Martin Gelinas, a 1989 first-round pick, a 1991 first-round pick, a 1993 first-round pick, and $15 million US. The impact of the trade, especially for fans in Edmonton, was immense. A politician in Canada tried to block the deal, Oiler fans burnt an effigy of Pocklington, and many blamed Janet Jones. Gretzky reassured that Janet had nothing to do with the trade, and that her wanting to further her acting career, and that them being married weeks before the trade was merely coincidence. But still, it didn't help quell the theories amongst fans. The day after the trade, in reference to the press conference, Pocklington told the press, quote, "He's a great actor. I thought he pulled it off beautifully when he showed how upset he was. I think he was upset, but he wants the big dream. I call LA the land of the big trip, and he wants to go where the trips are the biggest." But even after the trade, both sides benefited. The Oilers won the Stanley Cup in 1990 without Gretzky, and the Kings made the Stanley Cup final in 1993, where they unfortunately lost to the Montreal Canadiens in 5 games. However, the most impactful part of this trade is what can't be measured. Without this trade, hockey may not have gained the popularity that it did on the West Coast. Without Gretzky, there may not be the San Jose Sharks or the Anaheim Ducks. Similar to how the Dream Team had a monumental impact on basketball in Europe, Wayne Gretzky had a monumental impact on hockey in the United States. Of course, with nearly 40 years of hindsight, we know all the details of the trade. Gretzky had very much considered going to Detroit instead of LA, but his father convinced him to go to Los Angeles. And with the trade being 40 years ago, many seem to forget how shocking this trade really was. I highly recommend you watch the ESPN 30 for 30 entitled King's Ransom, where much of the information shared in this video was gathered. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.